The mainstream anime genre no longer feels the same now. It used to be action, adventure, or even when we got fantasy, we wouldn't see Law of Wacky being a carbon copy of Hunter x Hunter. But now, the mainstream is dominated by one genre, isekai, which not only dictates how the story and plot and mood would go, but also seemingly the whole setting of the world. It doesn't have to be, but that's what we got. Every season we would get at least 3 copycats of each other. For those who just start, maybe they are passable, but to me, who watch anime and get exposed to it almost daily, it felt like watching the same show all over again. You watch one, you've watched them all. This gave rise to a criticism towards the genre as a whole, like isekai is killing originality, and it's not hard to see why. While there are still some good titles floating around, it's pretty tiring trying to find that gold needle in the haystack. But the criticism towards isekai has been around a lot. I do agree with most of the criticism, it's just... aren't we forgetting something else? The parent genre of isekai, fantasy. I mean, with fantasy it's pretty much what dominates every fiction. So while it does seem like I'm talking about two different things, more or less I talk about the two similarly. But while it's understandable, not respectable, that isekai would be similar to each other because the genre steers some setting as well, in the case of fantasy it's just a lot more prominent when there are copycats. You go back in time, almost all anime felt different despite each trying to emulate each other. Shonen anime was the peak, yet you don't see Naruto and Bleach from one bark exactly. Now? All fantasy worlds follow the same system. The system from the most popular fantasy story, Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons. Magic is literally magic, with spell usage being casting almost instantaneously, with magic circle as a catalyst, with mana as a fuel. Set in a medieval era world with stone walls and castles. Monsters are either goblins, slime, or perhaps dragons. Races are only humans and demons. And I think this is only more prominent in isekai, but sometimes the way they measure something like health, mana, and the stuff is by a UI for a fucking anime. I haven't mentioned, but this also includes level, XP, and unlimited storage system like Leon just put a goddamn RPG out of his pocket. And there are more third rate tropes for other factors as well that I haven't gotten into, like how characters have RPG roles, like tank, healer, sorcerer, or the fact that the act of teaming up is called partying up, like they are in an actual game. Which would have been fine if it was set in the beginning like SAO, it makes sense. But most of these anime are just set in a normal medieval fantasy world. Another popular fantasy trope is that they are set in school.
Woo, let's go baby, I love going back to school.
Says no one ever. I mean, sure, for someone who hasn't been exposed to the likes, it seemed the idea was novel, if only for the idea. But again, as with isekai, the more such trope pop up, the more you crave for a higher quality one. Similarly to their counterpart, they also copycat each other. Any stereotype you have for the fantasy exists also in this trope and more. Rather than set in an adventuring world, now they are in school. The schools are the best of the best for training the next demon lord or hero. School's hierarchy divided by status, prejudice across the status in society. You might already see where I'm going with my argument. I purposefully left out talks about the plot or characters. I mainly talk about the setting, the world building, because I do think this is the important part that's barely talked about. Fantasy is supposed to be endless, as far as your mind could imagine, yet the resulting work is all around this little circle. It's not as much of a fantasy for you to focus on the people, no, the characters, the story. Drama has that, romance has that, action has that too. They ruined something that's supposed to be the main selling point of the fantasy genre. Because I talk about the setting, other people would recommend creating an entirely original series. I would even call that bullshit. In this day and age, something completely original is one in a million. And that's not viable if your livelihood depends on it. So what I would recommend is creating half originals. Either that or copying other popular fantasies. I mean, come on, D&D and Lord of the Rings aren't the only high fantasy here. How about copying other high fantasies like Harry Potter, the world of wizardry? So far, the only anime I know that does the wizarding world is Marshall, Little Witch Academia, and Radiant to a certain extent. How about we make another fantasy like that, guys? Or maybe an isekai sci-fi with robot? Ah, fuck. But I definitely do not recommend just blatantly copying these works without breaking them down at first to learn what makes them work, how the world works, the system, the natural laws. As a writer, this is very important. It sets the stage and makes sure you don't go too far away from your base, while also giving a believability factor for your audience that it is an actual universe, not just a copycat of another. But even that is simplifying it. One has to actually learn world building techniques, different types of fantasies, magic systems. And if you are a person of detail, like me, physics, justice system, history, geography, religion, culture, just to name a few. Writing is easy. Writing a good piece, on the other hand. So, obviously, there is a reason why fantasy world in these media are copycats like this. And the reason is basically the same with isekai. It also has been talked about a lot. So these aren't exactly my own words here. Fantasy, and to that extent isekai, is a genre popular with the mainstream. When something is popular, creators are obviously going to make more of it to appeal to the demand. And when answering such demands, it's easier and safer to follow a tried and true formula. But now you and me might wonder, if there is such an oversaturation of it in the market of low qualities, who are still demanding such genre? To that, my friend, the answer is, if you're watching this video, you're probably just like me, tired of the mainstream fantasy. What if I offer a theory that we are in the minority? And the reason why we have heard so much about this argument, this criticism, is because we are just a vocal minority. What if regular people, more so from the home country of the creation, still has a huge demand for the genre? I mean, people still consume it, it felt familiar to them. It's easy to digest, easy to forget. But maybe that's what the majority wants. A story just to be digested, not a gourmet story. Perhaps what irks us charms them instead. Of course, it's merely a theory, but a popular one at that. But I also think there is another reason that hasn't been talked about a lot. Many of these anime are adapting an existing source from either manga or light novels. And with how accessible it is to publish a story, people from all backgrounds are shooting their shots, starting a new hobby that is writing. Beginners, if you will. I think you already get the idea here. How do you think the first story by someone who has never touched a pen and paper before, who has no idea what storytelling is, has no knowledge of world building and characters and plot, that doesn't even know a commonly used writing jargon, would be? Imagine a kid who watched Harry Potter for the first time that goes, "Wow, I want to make a story like that." That is basically what happened with isekai fantasy and any popular genre at the time. They see, watch, or read cool stuff that makes them inspired, but they have no experience in the field at all. And what would they do if they want to make a story like their favorite show? They imitate. You might think an adult might have better minds than kids. You would be dead wrong. While adults can make coherent sentence or story or chapters that are of sequential order, that make sense on paper, the skill to make an interesting one is beyond what age can differentiate. It is very clear if you also dabble in the world of fan fiction. Go pick up one at random and tell me what you think. Down in the comments below. Sorry, I can't help myself. But do try. You'll see the quality is very much similar. It's mostly about the plot, how the characters interact with each other. So at that point, I guess what I could say is, give them a little break. I feel like if they still are in the writing endeavor, they would see their first work and be a little bit embarrassed to talk about it. I mean, sure, everyone should take pride at what they make, but they cannot help it to be a little critical as a growing artist. That just means they are growing, and that is cool in my book. I am sure they have made some good things in that time span. What is unforgivable is how studios just accept the offer to adapt some of these writings to life. No quality control whatsoever. It's just one-to-one, like being written by a toddler. This goes back again to the first reason. It's easy, it's cheap, it's still being consumed, and most importantly, it puts food on your table. Which is kinda sad when you have to think about that when you're in your artistic endeavor. Oh yeah, by the way, have you heard the story about Vincent van Gogh? Anyway, yeah, that's all from me. And I've also heard a very good argument that this will always happen to something popular. It gets imitated. People want a piece of that pie, whether writers or studios. And well, we have the mecha era, the shonen era, the harem era. They're kinda right. So sad thing to hear. Smash like, subscribe, I'll see you later.